Greetings, I'm Rob Chapman. I want to tell you all about my first ever session job and why it nearly broke me, and it really did. So for many years as a wandering guitar player, teaching guitar, playing in sort of local circuit bands in Wiltshire back in England. I used to frequent the BadCat club in Bradford-on-Avon. I used to play in all sorts of small places like Mole's club in Bath, sometimes as far as Fleece and Firkin in Bristol. But Wiltshire, England was basically my physical territory. But I always wanted to be a session guitar player. Session guitarist was like the elite of the elite. It was the top level of whatever you could achieve. And I always thought that would be the coolest thing to do. Be careful what you wish for. So at the time I was in a band called Hooker. And Hooker was a rough, bluesy rock band managed by a guy called Steve Lee, who used to manage John Lee Hooker. So he took on the name Hooker. And he lent me this beautiful Mezza Boogie Studio .22 combo and a Strat and all sorts of stuff. And this band was kind of making waves in Wiltshire. Our drummer was from London. And I'd met him when I went to the Guitar Institute, many years ago when I was like 18, 19. Ian. And Ian had started working for, at the time, EMI Records. And he started off as an assistant and then worked his way up into the marketing department. And this is a classic story in this industry, and probably every industry, to be honest with you, of it's not what you know, but it's who you know. And I knew Ian, and Ian worked in marketing, and he knew me, and he knew that I could play guitar because he was in a band with me. So when it came time for that kind of work to be allocated, well, of course, Ian would call me. And I did a whole bunch of completely random session work that I'll talk about in another video. But in particular, I want to talk about my first ever session, because I think this will be a useful story for anybody who feels like they might want to get into session work, session playing, being hired gun, that kind of vibe. My experience was all about playing live. I didn't have any experience in recording myself. Although I was educated as a musician, I was teaching guitar at the time. I was an educated guitarist. I could read music, but I couldn't really write particularly well. I could read rhythm notation, but it was slow. Most of my work was, look, here's a riff. I was teaching kids how to play rock and blues and shred, and sometimes adults. And I loved teaching guitar, but that was my experience. Writing rock and blues, playing in local pubs on the circuit, and teaching kids. Never recorded myself into that kind of thing. So then Ian phones up. Hey Rob, I've got a session for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, wow, this is exciting. My first ever session. So what is it? Yngwie Malmsteen. And my jaw went, bah! I'm like, are you kidding me? And he's like, no, we're doing a live in Leningrad Blu-ray or DVD. It was one of these old technologies. And I want you to do the masterclass on this product. And I was thinking, oh man, I'm so out of my depth here. This is like asking me to play basketball. Do you know what I mean? It's just insane. But of course, I did the thing that you should do. And I just said, yes. And then I jumped straight into the deep end with this project. What they wanted was for me to transcribe 3 of Yngwie's live tracks from this Live in Leningrad DVD, and then have the transcription flow underneath the video in the bonus features section as tab. So it would come up one bit, like it would come up in bars, and there would be a bouncy karaoke ball allowing the viewer the opportunity to try and play in tempo. And I thought, no problem, I can do this. This will be easy. I was, and still am, big fan of Yngwie Malmsteen. I think in terms of, feel in vibrato, pure, unadulterated, bending prowess, and incredible technique. No one really beats Yngwie. I mean, a lot of people try. Maybe Rick Graham gets there. I don't know. I think Yngwie's pretty hard to beat. And it isn't just the technique that I love. It's the compositions. I love the riffing. I just love his guitar playing. And I had studied Yngwie when I was at the Guitar Institute. One of the teachers there, Sean Baxter, was a big fan of Yngwie Malmsteen, and he had taught me all about the hybrid picking stuff. Rusty at the moment, but just economy picking rather than alternate, and how Yngwie kind of mechanicked around the fretboard, linking various modes over certain chord progressions, interested in Bach, that kind of thing. So I had the fundamental understanding there. Fender sent me a guitar for this. I think it was something that Ian arranged. I got a beautiful American Strat, but it wasn't scalloped. And I realised that I really needed to have it scalloped so that I could understand, because there were times when Yngwie was doing tone and a half bends, and I think he was pressing in as well as up to achieve some of that. So they put me in touch with a company called Knight Guitars in England. Knight, not the night time, but the Knight in Armour. Knight Guitars. Run by an old boy. It was really lovely, super experienced luthier making semi-hollow and hollow body guitars, and his son. And they're brilliant. I think they still work now. And they took this Strat and they painted it all black for me, and they did the whole fretboard scalloping. Really perfect job. And it was a good thing because I did need the scalloping to fully understand what Yngwie was doing. And even down to some of the notation is use teeth because some of the licks that Yngwie does live are with his teeth. And I really wish I still had that guitar. It looked like this. The record label, EMI at the time, sent me, and I'm not kidding, a VHS player and a VHS cassette and a remote and some batteries. And they were like, could you transcribe it from this? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I set up the VHS. I basically made my room. I became a work room. Small room in a little house in Wiltshire. Little TV, like a proper TV that's deep. Connected it to the VHS player. Had to find some cables. Got the tape in. Makes that beautiful sound that I kind of miss nowadays. And I start playing. And I realise the pause function on the remote has about 1.5 seconds of delay. You press it, one, and it goes, and it stops. And I'm like, that's going to be a problem because there's going to be a lot of start and stop. And that's a tape. You know what happens? Well, if you're old enough, you know what happens to VHS tapes after a while. Anyway, I almost destroyed the tape, the remote, went through a couple of sets of batteries just playing, listening intently, stopping, writing down, and then trying to see what he was doing. Obviously, I had a visual from the video, but it's a live video. So from time to time, it will cut away from Yngwie or focus on the face or, maybe just his right hand. And it was so frustrating trying to work out precisely what he was doing. And I'm absolutely confident now that I got it maybe 80% right on the final product. I don't know. I haven't seen it for a while. But I managed to do it. Anyway, I went to the studio with my transcription. I'd used some random piece of software to just key in the transcription so you could listen to it being played. And then I played it along with what he was doing, and it was as approximate as I could get it, bearing in mind there was some very unorthodox kinds of playing in his live set that I'll talk about in a second. Get to the studio, which was Metropolis in Chiswick, big old English recording studio. Used to be a powerhouse, I think it was. I spent a lot of time in Metropolis doing session work for different companies, including Universal Records and some other independents. Anyway, get to the video section, because the studio was divided into audio recording, video focused stuff, live rooms, nice big canteen, that kind of thing. And they said, right, we're going to animate the bouncy ball for the karaoke. And I'm like, this might be interesting. They couldn't animate the ball fast enough. Yngwie is so fast. I mean, he's fast enough at the best of times, but when he's live, that man is possessed by something. We just couldn't get the ball fast enough. And so I said to them, look, why don't we just have one bar pop up at a time? And then the only way they're going to be able to absorb this information is if they pause it, read the bar, and then carry on kind of vibe. I really think that the whole concept was a bit whack, but there you go. And they said, yeah, okay, that's the workaround. So we just, put one bar at a time, let the music play, and it turns off. And it was a bonus feature. It took a long time to get these bars popping up at the right time. And it took a long time to make it look good, because of course the text was quite small. And they didn't want rhythm notation, because they didn't want to put off beginner, intermediates. They wanted anyone to feel like they could tackle some Yngwie, which is just like, no, you can't. Not anyone can do that. You really need to spend quite a lot of time doing stuff like this. Anyway, I finished the job, said goodbye to everybody. That was really fun. And sent my invoice in. I think I was paid something like 500 sterling for 3 of these live tracks, a day in the studio. I mean, it took me about a week of transcription. It was really, I got paid nothing for the whole thing. But what the experience taught me was the 3 things that I didn't know. The first thing was, when somebody comes up with an idea and they ask you to do it, it's good to say yes, but it's also good to counter with what might work better in the industry that they don't understand. And obviously, EMI at the time didn't understand guitar tuition. It was something that I did. And what I should have said is, what you need really is a video of somebody teaching these parts, rather than just the individual, the transcription. Because I don't think it's an easy thing to learn from tab. And the other thing is, I had no idea, none, about recording myself. I literally had to go out and buy an interface. I think I got a Presonus interface, work out how to connect it, work out how to mic up a speaker cabinet. I hadn't yet worked with anyone like Nick Talbot, Eddie Kramer, to even learn about recording myself. Even at the Guitar Institute, they didn't teach me how to record myself. So I went through the whole process of learning how to use a mic pre, microphones, miking up, to get a sound where I could work in a room and then transcribe and then record what I was doing to make sure it worked with what Yngwie was doing, because I wanted to back check my transcriptions. So I went through the whole I better learn to record myself process, which took a long time. I think one of the most valuable physical lessons that I got from this experience of deeply studying Yngwie's playing for this session was how soft and how small and minimal the movements need to be in order to really get to the kind of speed that Yngwie was achieving in this Live in Leningrad DVD. And it was in particular this lick that he always does, where you go from like that. It took me a long time to understand that his pick movements were absolutely tiny. You really can't get to that kind of speed if you are alternate picking big motions. It needs to be that the pick cuts through the string and then waits before it comes back. It can't cut through the string and travel a distance. And if you look at Yngwie's right hand, sometimes it will even look as if he's not picking, but he is. It's just the movements are so economical, they're so small, so finessed, that it's allowing him that movement and that technique. Taking the idea and all the information to a studio for them to assimilate was a whole other learning process. What did they expect? What do they need? what are their expectations? So there was a lot of learning all about that. And then there was the financial element. I didn't set my financial expectations at the beginning of that project. At the end, I just went, right, how much am I getting paid? And it was well, we're going to give you 500 quid. So always set your price and the expectations financially at the beginning of a project. I mean, the whole thing, though, was really, really good for me. All the local press spoke, Rob Chapman does session work for Yngwie Malmsteen project with a record label. It was big news in my hometown, and I certainly gained a few more guitar students as a result of having been involved in that project. I did later get the opportunity to meet Yngwie. I was at Music Messe. I mean, back when Music Messe was still kind of a big deal, and I was demonstrating for Orange amplifiers at the time, and he was doing a signing, and I jumped off the stage, hung the guitar up. Damon, who was managing director of Orange at the time, was like, "It's fine, go." And I ran to the signing queue and waited sort of 15 minutes to meet Yngwie. And when I got to him and he was signing a poster for me, I said, "Listen, I have to say thank you so much. I was the guy that did the session on the Live in Leningrad DVD." And he looked up and he went, "Oh, thanks. I didn't have to do it. That's good for me." And he shook my hand. Having Yngwie Malmsteen shake your hand is a bit like having your hand wrapped in meat. No one talks about the size of Yngwie's hands. They are like a hand and a half. And I'm sure that's how he's able to do all that kind of crazy, stuff. He's got giant plates of meat on his hands. And he was very nice to me. I know there are all sorts of people that say, oh, he's arrogant and all this kind of stuff. Maybe he is from time to time, but when I met him, he was very nice, very courteous, and he took his time, allowed me time to speak with him, which I really appreciated. Anyway, that was my first ever session job. I'd gone from nothing to working for EMI and doing a session for Yngwie Malmsteen. One of the main lessons that I learned was patience. You can do practically anything given enough time and enough patience. It took me a solid, 2 weeks of work to achieve what I needed to do, but I got there. At one point, I really felt like giving up. There was a particular blues lick in Spasibo Blues that I just couldn't do. And there was a point where I was on the verge of phoning in and saying, "Listen, man, I'm sorry, I just can't." Phone, Brett Garcet or phone someone at Guthrie or someone else and have them. I just can't do it. But I didn't. And I'm glad that I stuck with it. So there's my story of my first ever session job. I guess the thing is, be careful what you wish for, huh? I'll tell you another story in another video about the rest of my session work, things that I worked on that I think were really fun, outcomes, expectations, advice on doing more session work. And I hope this video has been really fun for you. Take it easy. Chappers out.